Welcome back to CRE Unplugged. I am your host, Ryan Elizari, and we have an exciting show for you today. My guest has built one of the most recognizable brands from the last decade and then walked away from consumerism almost entirely. Philip Krim co-founded and ran Casper, the sleep company, from the ground up to a public listing on the New York Stock Exchange before it sold to private equity in 2021. Along the way, he became one of the most active angel investors of his generation, backing companies like Ramp and Reddit before most people even heard of them. Then Krim did something you do not see often. He walked away from something people touch every single night, sleep, and went into something people will never see. He is now the co founder and CEO of Montauk Capital, a firm that builds and invests in companies at the intersection of AI, energy, and digital infrastructure. What he calls the Electron company. In about 3 years, Montauk has launched roughly a dozen companies. We are going to get into why bring your own power is the default way data centers get built and where real innovation happens as capital floods into his sector. Why enterprise AI governance might be more theater than substance in most companies, and what Montauk actually needs from a commercial real estate owner it will build a company with them. This is a conversation about what it looks like to bet on infrastructure instead of the next consumer application. And with that, I'm excited to introduce Philip Krim, co-founder and CEO of Montauk Capital. How are you today, Philip?
I'm great, Ryan. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us. We're recording this in the middle of summer, so I have to ask: beach, pool, lake, or camping in the great outdoors? If you have to choose one, what would it be?
Great question. I think I'm a toss-up between beach and pool this summer.
Beach and pool. Okay. Are you much of a camper, or that's not in your wheelhouse?
Not much of a camper, and I've got little ones, so juggling between the beach and pool with them is more than enough fun for me.
Yes, I definitely have to agree. The beach can become challenging. I also have two little kids, so I always find the pool being the best route for kids in the summer.
I agree. Although this weekend we had a humpback whale sighting, so that was probably the highlight of the weekend for part of our household. So it can be action-packed, that's for sure.
That's amazing. Where was that located?
Off of Long Island.
Okay, wow. I live not too far from you, so I got to see how I could find these whales. My kids would be pretty excited. I'm sure you've gotten this question before because of your background, but being the founder of Casper, you've helped millions of people sleep better. So do you sleep well considering your challenging times as a father and also running a company?
I would say never enough sleep. I am a big fan of sleep. I'm someone that's always needed a lot of sleep, but I wish I could get more. It is important. It's important to be, present and to just process everything else in life. But lots going on, and that's okay too.
Yeah, well, let's get into that. As I said, you've helped put millions of people in bedrooms selling something as simple as sleep. Now you are building companies around power grids and AI infrastructure that most people will never see. So, do you miss building something ordinary that can't be touched?
It's a good question and not one I've really gotten before. And I guess this was accidental, but maybe the only thing as universal as sleep is consuming energy. Certainly different markets, different worlds, but it is always fun to think about markets and opportunities that really do touch so many people. And if you can make it better, more affordable, more accessible, then you have the chance to impact a lot of people's lives. And so I think that is a through line across both chapters of my life and career. But really, it was not intentional to have that as a theme, but I'll take it. It provides a nice narrative around it.
Yeah, I think you're putting it in good perspective. Like you're thinking of it in terms of energy. A lot of people they usually have now these bands. I'm forgetting the name on top of my head, and it could show how much sleep you've gotten, and then it'll tell you how much energy you'll have to be able to do a workout for a specific day. Like a lot of athletes have been wearing it because it helps them understand their energy level. So is that kind of like your thought process?
Well, so I think you're referring to the Whoop band,
The Whoop band, yeah.
and is an example of how you can take electrons and turn them into something that is actionable and interesting. And that is a very specific example of turning electrons into intelligence. And that theme is certainly one that is core to everything we're doing at Montauk Capital and core to how we think about opportunities in life. And increasingly, we're seeing that the world is moving to an electron central economy and opportunity. And it's because those electrons are able to convert into things that are very valuable, whether it's intelligence or insights or mobility. It's a new paradigm of thinking about the world. And that's something that we do think a lot about at Montauk Capital.
Yeah, and one of the main things that I know you're focused on is bring your own power, and it's becoming this standard way for data center development and how it's getting built, and instead of relying on grid capacity. So, can you name a market where that shift is actually playing out right now?
Sure. I would say Texas is probably at the forefront of the bring your own power or bring your own generation theme. But we think it's a federal theme across the US. We think it's a global theme across markets in Asia and Europe. And it's because the grids were not meant to handle multiple gigawatts of capacity coming online and the demand associated with these gigascale, hyperscale data centers. And we need to rethink how you're going to power the future. And so bring your own generation or bring your own power is one aspect of a way where you can help an aged, stretched grid handle the amount of demand that we're seeing. And we haven't been through a period where we've seen demand for power increase the way it is right now. So that's why I think you need innovative solutions. I think some of those solutions are physical hardware solutions like bringing generators and generating new power. I think some of that is software driven about how you optimize loads and distribute workloads, et cetera. And I think all of this innovation will help us be able to be in a world where we can add tens of gigawatts of power to the economy, to the grid, to data centers without it disrupting day-to-day lives for everyone that depends on the grid.
What you're saying right now is so timely, especially because New York just put a 1-year moratorium on new hyperscale data centers over
That's right.
50 megawatts. So is that kind of like the pushback that you were expecting?
We identified regulatory concerns as probably the number one issue to building out data centers and building out AI probably a year to 2 years ago. And we said that playing out that 2 to 3 years ago, we thought the number one issue was going to be power. At the time, everyone was talking about chips being the limiter for digital infrastructure. We thought that chips were actually going to be solved relatively quickly and people would have access to chips, but that would quickly then become a power problem. And if you play that forward, a power problem becomes a regulatory problem. So, how do you deal with solutions that solve the regulatory concerns? And the regulatory concerns stem from community concerns. And so, we have been thinking a lot about how do you make data centers more sustainable, more efficient, a better member and partner within the community. And it's led us to have innovative solutions, some of which can bring scaled compute online below thresholds that will become regulatory issues, some about running more efficient, more sustainable data centers. But these are themes that we think about. And our business today is one where we run a venture studio. So we like to think about what are problems that are coming or are here today, and where can we stand up businesses and products that will be solutions or opportunities around those problems.
Going back to what you were talking about local politics, and I think that this has been a theme with a few of my other guests. And then I heard this on a panel with someone who was head of communications for OpenAI, and he was talking about doing a lot of these community workshops to educate locals about the pros of data centers and what are the misinformations out there. Do you think that needs to be done more for people to become educated on this so they aren't just going by what they're seeing in the news or social media?
I think community education is one aspect of something that can help here because I do think there are a lot of misunderstandings around the impacts that data centers are having in communities, and especially future designs of data centers that really don't use water and that can be very grid friendly. So I do think education is one part of it, but I think even before the education comes the actual solutions to make sure that these data centers are not negatively impacting the citizens in a community, and are not an issue that really should have the kind of backlash that they're experiencing today.
Yeah, 100%. I want to now talk about AI. You can't watch anything or read anything right now with that being the center of conversation. But a lot of people talk about AI governance, and a lot of enterprise leaders believe that they already got this AI governance solved. What is the tell that a company's AI adoption is a top-down mandate and not real organizational change?
Well, I think it's a good question that is a much more complex answer than maybe it appears at its surface. And I think there is good enterprise level AI adoption and governance when you have both a tops down and bottoms up view of what's happening. Meaning you can't just have the tops down mandate that you need to go use AI and use more tokens and use that as part of your everyday workflow. And at the same time, you also can't just have the bottoms up view of people buying subscriptions to Claude and OpenAI, et cetera, and not their view. For this to work at scale, you need to have the tops down, not just governance and mandate, but really visibility around where are we spending money around tokens? What is the ROI of that? How do I make the business case for it so that we can continue to scale it in a way that is profitable and efficient and measurable? And comes back to, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So it's got to be manageable for organizations to embrace it and scale it. They got to be able to measure it. And so there is some real tops down governance work around how to do all that. And at the same time, you need kind of the bottoms up buy-in of having different groups within the organization use AI in an efficient way. And I think the best practice is not to just assume that people will learn how to do it the right way. I think there is real internal education around how different organizations are using it. How can you use existing tools? There are other great companies out there that are helping organizations with their AI implementation. Companies like Ramp have made a great effort around the finance team and how they should do it. Other companies specialize to help different parts of your org optimize how they're using AI. And so I think you need kind of both parts of the organization, or both pursuits of how to manage AI happen in order for the enterprise to really embrace it and scale it to the point of potential that it really has.
Do you think most buyers of tech right now, do you think they really understand what AI governance means?
No, I think we're at the early days of understanding what AI governance means, what AI ROI can be, about how to measure it, about how to manage it, about how to push it into the organization. There's also not one size fits all, meaning you could use AI, but you could use it poorly or you could use it very well. And so understanding what good looks like and how to make sure the organization is doing that, I think we're in the earliest of days of doing that. And I think that's part of the conservative nature of just enterprise adoption of any new technology. And certainly, AI intelligence has a TAM that is massive because it can impact literally every person in every part of an organization. But how companies embrace it, how they understand how to benchmark what good looks like, and drive that efficacy of use is something that I think we're in the very early days of, and that very few organizations get it right.
I have to ask this, as an investor, do you think right now is a great time for you to be able to invest in AI or in companies that are implementing AI, because of this unknown, because of there's a lot out there, or data out there, to show the outcomes that we need to make like smart investments? Do you think right now is a good time to take advantage of all that?
I mean, unequivocally, yes. Now is a great time to be investing broadly into this ecosystem and against AI. I would say the more nuanced answer is, I still think you have to pick your spots. I think valuations matter. I think, there are some areas that seem like they're getting a little bit frothy, and there's a lot of exuberance. And then I think there are other areas where there's a very measured path to generating real returns, and to invest in a very disciplined way. So like anything, I think again the backdrop is game on. Let's go find this. The gems out there. This is a transformational technology, and we are in a new paradigm of kind of technology reinventing the world around us. So it's a great investment backdrop, but you still have to be disciplined and have a view of where there's kind of the right risk adjusted opportunities out there.
Speaking about gems, you've spent over a decade angel investing before Montauk. So you backed companies like you mentioned, Ramp and Reddit early. Is there one that you passed up on that you still think about?
There's many for sure. Yeah, it's funny. I mean, the one that comes to mind immediately was Liquid Death, the water company. If someone
Yeah.
said I'm going to put water in a can and I'm going to sell it at a premium and I'm going to brand it like a motorcycle brand, um, who knew that it's become such an amazing consumer brand and product. So passing on that was not an awesome decision for sure. I have a good buddy of mine, Jeremy, that runs Underdog Fantasy, and he gave me the option to invest in his tequila company or his sports betting company. I unfortunately drink and don't really gamble, so I went with the tequila company and not the gambling company. It
Yeah.
wasn't the best decision, and there are many, many more like that I've unfortunately passed on. But overall, that's why we play the game, and that's what makes investing fun.
Yeah, thank you for being so forthcoming with that. With Liquid Death, I got to tell you, for like the first like few months when it came out, I just thought it was a beer company based on the cans.
Totally. That was the branding they were going for.
Yeah.
And in hindsight, it's brilliant and it totally worked. And I can totally see why it worked. And getting that branding right where you can really break through a very noisy competitive category like water is really, really hard. So kudos to the team. And they nailed it. And they nailed it because people like me and you thought it was a beer company and thought it was something it wasn't. And it turns out it was just really great tasting water. And they did an amazing job scaling in a really tough category.
Yeah, I have to say branding is such a key component to building any company. I mean, like right now with me building my podcast, I've learned about personal branding and the importance of it. I teach a class, entrepreneurship class every year, and I, tell my students about how much personal branding means. Is that something that you've thought about when you're looking at different companies to invest in?
It is for sure, and I'm happy to hear you talk about it and embrace it. And I would say where people, I think, make a common mistake is that branding's not only for consumer-facing businesses or consumer-facing endeavors. I think even on the enterprise side, on the B2B side, your brand, how people consume your business, your logo, what they see when they interact with you or your website, it matters. At the end of the day, we're all people making decisions, whether it's in what do I buy for my family decision bucket or what do I buy for my organization bucket. We all respond to emotive connections, and at the core of branding, that's what it is. It's a great emotional connection with something. And so I totally agree with everything you're saying, and would push people to think about it even in the B2B context that a lot of us spend time in.
Yeah, which kind of brings me back to knowing that the best founders are stubborn about why their product needs to exist, but they're very open to customer feedback. So where is the line according to you? Like how do you tell the difference between conviction and just not listening?
That's I think one of the great areas that we talk a lot about when we meet founders that we want to back or that we want to work with is that grit and determination to run through walls, which you need as a founder, but that openness to learn, that coachability, that desire to take in all the data points and then make your own decision with conviction. And it's hard. It's not easy to suss out, but I think that balance is the exact right question to ask and the right thing to push on when it comes to a founder, because you definitely need someone that's going to be headstrong and really has a strong point of view, but someone who's willing to change that point of view upon learning something new. And the faster you can digest new learnings and potentially change your point of view, I think the better you are suited to then go be a founder and operate in a very dynamic, constantly changing world.
So that must be a real drawback to you if you're giving your opinions or recommendations to a founder and you're getting, pushback from them about that. they don't think you're right about what you're telling them. I'm assuming, right?
It's funny. I so I will say, like, it is very different if you're not in the CEO seat. So I was, 8.5 years CEO of Casper, and that was a great run, and that's one way of operating. And now I'm not in the CEO seat when it comes to our portfolio companies, but I work very closely with CEOs. So it's definitely wearing a different hat and thinking about things differently. But I come at it where it's totally okay to disagree. And I think we probably stole this from Amazon when we were at Casper, but we always said it's fine to disagree and commit, but you have to have that second part. You have to have that commitment where if we don't see eye to eye, but we agree it's your call to make, then great. You make the decision. I'm committed to the decision, even if I disagree. And so we really look at it as like, we just want to be heard. We want to make sure that we have the conversation, that we're all honest, that we're transparent. We all have the same bias towards what we want to see happen. We are all incentivized to get to the same point when it comes to building a company. So let's discuss it. Let's, air out what we're all thinking. And then whoever is the decision maker, go with that decision. And it's okay to agree or disagree, but commit. And that's really how we think about kind of the framework for discussions.
Yeah, I think that's a great mindset for anyone that's running a company or getting advice from their investors. Part of Montauk's model is that you team up with commercial real estate owners who bring real assets to the table. What does an owner need to bring Montauk will build a company with them?
It's a great question, and it varies. It could be something as little as insights, like, hey, we see this opportunity. Is this interesting? Let us tell you why we think that this is a really compelling area, and great, let's go chase after it. It could be physical distribution. We operate 1,000 warehouses, and we see this as a consistent problem across each of it. Or we run 500 multifamily properties, and we hear this problem across the vast majority of it. Okay, great. Let's work through it. If we come up with a solution, could you be a distribution partner? The reason why we like asset owners and managers and why we work closely with them is because they're on the front lines. They know their business well. They know what's impacting their P&L. They have a very specific, well-informed view around where there's opportunity, where there's risk, where there's problems, solutions, et cetera. And getting that frontline support and that frontline buy-in is really powerful. And then how the relationship goes from there is, totally up for discussion and where we can be really opportunistic. But at the very least, it's kind of this willingness of, hey, there is the potential to build something new as a standalone business and opportunity. Let's discuss what that could look like. And if we're aligned that the world needs that, then let's go figure out how to build it and who will be responsible for what.
So what would that first meeting actually look like if there's a commercial real estate owner listening right now that wants to meet with you?
Sure. I would say one of two ways. Either we have an idea and we want to talk to commercial real estate owners because we want to get feedback around that idea. And just to give you an example, and like any good investor, talk up my own book a little bit. We have a business called Perimeter Compute, and Perimeter Compute is helping landlords monetize stranded energy and excess energy and existing infrastructure. And what that means is that a lot of commercial real estate buildings have the ability to use more energy. They're only consuming a certain amount of what they are approved from their utility to use. And if they have enough of that excess energy unused, sitting there stranded at the building, we can oftentimes use existing infrastructure to set up micro data centers within the building's envelope, run those data centers remotely, and monetize that real estate. And this was previously unrentable real estate. So that's one where it's a new idea. No one's ever done that. We'd love feedback on it. We'd love to hear from landlords, and we just want to hear what are the things that are important to you. What do we need to solve for? And we've had the fortunate opportunity to spend time with some of the best and brightest landlords in the world around this, and it's really helped us evolve and iterate on our idea and our go-to-market. Other times we get landlords or commercial real estate owners that we know come to us and say, hey, we're trying to deal with this problem. Can we brainstorm it? Or we'd love to hear your feedback around it. We're trying to be more energy efficient in common areas. Have you thought about different ways of managing it? And what are some solutions out there? And sometimes we could say, yes, we've looked at that. Why don't you go talk to our friends at this company? Or, yeah, we see that as an opportunity. Or, you know what, we don't think that's as big an opportunity. But sometimes it's like, oh, wow, that's a really interesting area. Let us go do some work and we'll come back to you with an idea or two to discuss. And that's how the conversation gets going.
I think that's a missing opportunity right now is how can you, especially in office buildings, how can you take advantage of open, amenity spaces or even empty vacant spaces that have been vacant for, who knows how many months or years. I think that's an untapped area right now.
Totally agreed. I think landlords now are looking at every square foot and saying, how can I monetize it better, more effectively? And they're looking at their expenses and saying how they can rationalize it. I mean, we are in an energy inflation environment, so energy costs are going up, and we have to do whatever we can to ameliorate that. And the two ways to ameliorate it are either save on your energy expenses or figure out how to monetize your energy in a different, better way. And we're trying to think through both of those halves.
Yeah, 100%. What I love is you're the director at the Travis Manian Foundation. You work with veterans and Gold Star families, much different than what you're doing now. What pulled you into that work?
I am a big fan of the Travis Manion Foundation. I would say two people were most influential in that. One is Ryan Manion. Ryan is Travis's sister. She runs the organization. She's an amazing leader. She's very charismatic, very dynamic, very smart, very fun to work with, and she has a big vision about what she wants to accomplish. And I was lucky enough to be asked to help with that in a small way. And then I have another good friend and work friend, a gentleman named Alan Sheriff, who I worked very closely with on the Casper IPO and got to know him on a personal level. His sons were Marines and served, and he got me involved in the board work that he was doing as well. And I'm lucky that I get to work closely with Alan and the rest of the directors there to help that organization continue to serve veterans across the country.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Has that work changed how you think about leadership inside your own company or the companies you've invested in?
It's definitely helped me continue to evolve how I think about leadership broadly, and that's in part because of who the Travis Manion Foundation attracts within their organization. So, spending time with folks that were part of our armed service leadership and were former generals and admirals, really, when you hear them speak about some of the things that they dealt with at a leadership level, it blows out anything you deal with on a corporate level. We're lucky that. Alex Gorski is on the board, so he's the former chairman and CEO of Johnson and Johnson. So he always has amazing stories of his leadership challenges and opportunities within his career. So it's just an organization that attracts amazing people at every level, and I love hearing their stories, and it helps me be inspired to think about how we can drive better leadership across our organization and portfolio.
Really love that. Uh, Philip, one last question I have for you. Based on our talks in the past, you said that a lot of people who are in college or they're about to enter the workforce that they need to lean all the way into AI. What is the version of that advice you would give yourself at 22?
Good question. I think I was someone who was not technical, so I was not an engineer at school. But at 22, you're post college, and that embracing AI means that you really need to go deep on how to use it in the best way possible. And I think earlier we talked about just because you're using AI doesn't mean you're using it well. And there is a big difference, and we see it within our companies. There's a very big difference between using AI well and not. And so just being really committed to putting in the hours to learn what good AI usage looks like and how you develop skills that help you, even from a non-technical perspective, is really where I'd push myself, because I'm not going to go learn how to use it to code better and drive better product development, but you can still use it to transform the way you operate your part of the business, no matter where you are within the business. And so being committed to it, putting in the hours, and absorbing how you can help impact your organization wherever you end up working is going to be something where you have the ability to stand out versus your peers. And I think that's what's most important when you want to be a upwardly mobile 22-year-old starting your career.
I think a lot of that's great advice, but I think a lot of the young people right now who are looking at AI, they're probably feeling overwhelmed. There's so much content out there for them to look at in order for them to become more AI native. But I think right now, in my opinion, I think it's as simple as what is your workflow on a day-to-day basis and how can AI help you with those workflows? I think that would be a good starting step. And then from there, they can kind of figure out, okay, if I want to go and become, let's say, a financial analyst for a bank or for a real estate company, what would those workflows be, and how can I accomplish my goals by using AI? Right? I think. Do you agree with that, or do you think it's more complicated?
No, I think that's a great starting point. I mean, the nice thing is that the AI has gotten so good. If you ask it, how can I help? How can I use you to help me more? It will start to tell you. And certainly having it in the workflow loop is a good starting point so that it understands the work you're doing. And of course, you have to do this in a data compliant, enterprise compliant way, going back to governance. Uh,
Right.
but the more that it understands you, the more that it's trained on your data, your information, the more it understands what you do for a living and where you come from and what your mandate is, the more informed it can be to help you understand how it can continue to transform the work that you do.
Yeah, that's really great advice. Thank you. Well, Philip, this was a lot of fun. I've definitely learned a lot, and I'm definitely going to find that whale that you've been speaking about from our first conversation. Because if I do, I'll be a hero for my kids.
Absolutely. Well, good luck with that, Ryan. It's very Moby Dick, but I love it. And thank you for having me today. And I really appreciate it.
Stay tuned for my recap after a word from our sponsor. Hey there, CRE Unplugged fam. We would like to give a huge shout out to our sponsor, the Game Changers over at Hilo, the customer experience platform for buildings that's turning heads in the real estate world.
That's right. Can we talk about how Hilo is transforming the way we manage properties and create unforgettable experiences? Ryan, what's the first thing that comes to your mind when you think about Hilo?
Well, Nadine, it's all about reducing friction in property management. Hilo is like the magic wand that makes everything seamless and efficient. Say goodbye to those time consuming tasks and hello to streamlined operations and communications.
Efficiency is crucial, but what about personalized experiences? Hilo takes it to the next level with a vision to tailor each interaction to the needs and preferences of its customers.
And let's not forget the community aspect. Hilo builds vibrant, connected communities. It's fostering a sense of belonging and togetherness.
Now, here's something that truly sets Hilo apart: their commitment to advancing ESG initiatives. They're not just about buildings, they're about making a positive impact on the environment. That's a win-win for everyone.
So, to our listeners out there, if you're ready to elevate your properties, digitize and enhance customer experience, and maximize satisfaction, Hilo is the answer. Please visit hiloapp.com for more information. That's hiloapp.com. That conversation with Philip covered a lot of ground. First, I asked him if he's building something people could actually touch. Going from, sorry, let me restart. Sorry. That conversation with Philip covered a lot of ground. First, I asked him if he missed building something people could actually touch, going from Casper to power grids and AI infrastructure. And his answer caught me off guard. He said maybe the only thing as universal as sleep is energy. He wasn't planning that through the line, but he'll take it. That ties right into the idea of what he calls the electron economy, taking electrons and turning them into something actionable, like a Whoop band, turning your sleep into real intelligence about your body. That's the whole bet behind Montauk Capital. And on the data center side, bringing your own power is already happening in Texas, and Philip thinks it goes national, then global, because the grid was never built with this much demand. His team actually called this sequence 2 or 3 years ago. Chips got solved first, then power became the bottleneck. And then power becomes a regulatory problem. And you're seeing that right now with New York putting this 1 year moratorium on hyperscale data centers over 50 megawatts, which I guess is right on schedule. Now on AI governance, I actually tried to push him further on this because I wanted to know, do buyers and CEOs out there actually understand what AI governance even means, or they're just saying the word because it sounds good in a board meeting? And Philip was honest and he says we're still in the early days and there's no one size fits all. And very few companies actually get it right now. Honestly, that's what I'm seeing out there. A lot of leaders are throwing this term around like it's already solved, when it's really still a lot of time before a lot of these leaders and CEOs figures it out. Something else that really stuck with me when we got into branding, I told them that even building this podcast, I've learned so much about what personal branding really means. And I also bring it up every year with my real estate entrepreneurship class that I teach. And Philip made a great point back that branding isn't just a consumer thing. It just matters just as much as B&B. And at the end of the day, we're all making decisions on emotional connection, whether it's what you buy for your family or what you buy for your company. I thought that was really smart. And for my real estate people listening, Montauk's model with owners can really start small. Sometimes it's just like a landlord willing to share what's broken in their portfolio. That's literally how their company Perimeter Compute came about, turning stranded, unused energy into micro data centers inside a building. Honestly, that got me thinking about all the vacant office space that's out there and how the unused amenity spaces can be a real opportunity for owners right now if they really start thinking that way. Well, that's a wrap on this one. Thanks for spending part of your day with us here on CRE Unplugged. If this conversation with Philip Krim gave you something to chew on, the best thing you could do is subscribe and leave a review. It puts us on the show in front of a lot of people who are looking into the future of the built world. Find us at creunplugged.com, or you can reach us at info@creunplugged.com. And follow along on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Instagram. Until next time, keep your conversations real and unplugged.